In talking about political factors on the national level, the unofficial national language of English adds to the imbalance of power and influence that non-English speakers can have in politics, which furthers the oppressive cycle. Also, the separation of cross-section of Office of English Language Acquisition, or OELA, and the Office of Special Education Programs, or OSEP, OSEP. Those two entities have been working separately prior to 2017, which doesn't help in looking at the intersectionality of English language learners and those identified with disability. At the national level, when IDEA reauthorized ESSA, that's when states were mandated to report the disaggregated data, and therefore these two offices had to start working together and states had to collect the data. Reporting on ELs as disaggregated data for the SPED classification was then mandated. In looking at this chart here, what this is showing us is the number of English learners identified and receiving special services through special education and for language instruction. So this biennial report has collected data from the school year 2016-17 and 2017-18, but this report was not published until 2021. So how are we actually able to use this data to help us in the education world in a quick way? Also, I wanted to point your attention to New Mexico, which is down here at the bottom. Nothing to report for the number of ELs identified with disabilities. They are the one and only state in the United States that reported nothing. Looking at some more political factors, here is a chart of English language learners with disabilities. And in this current 2021 publication, the English language learners with disabilities provided this fact sheet, which is also showing New Mexico here with a very high percentage rate of that intersectionality at 22.2% and 9.2% difference between total number of individuals with disabilities from ages 6 to 21 in school year 17-18 compared with individuals with disabilities categorized as ELs as well. At the state level, I chose to use New Mexico for specific factors because they were easy to identify and because of the community that New Mexico State is in. They are the second highest percentage, only behind Puerto Rico, of ELs also identified as having disabilities. And like we looked at that OELA report, New Mexico was the only state to not report in that document. I think that for the state of New Mexico, the Yazzie Martinez case, which is still pending, will bring forth many changes which should have a positive impact in theory for students with special education services as well as students with cultural diversity and language diversity in the state of New Mexico. But as we can see with some of these other charts, just because the data is being reported, just because it's required, it still takes us to make the changes within our classrooms for these students in a timely manner. So looking at what research says, which initiated back in the 1960s. Pearl and Lampert provided a bilingual study revealing for the very first time the advantages to learning in the primary language at school. And we've also seen longitudinal studies that have documented the achievements of ELLs to be better when the bilingual program they participate in is effective, inclusive, well implemented, and sustained throughout elementary school. And so that means that it's up to us to inform ourselves first, to implement the best practices for the individual, which also means having the ability to identify the difference between language needs and developmental needs in the early childhood setting, and making sure that these students who are learning English are given the language supports that they need when they need language supports, or the special education supports that they need when there's cognitive delays. So I leave you with a page of great references so that if you want to research any further into this topic, you have access to a variety of references. Never stop learning.